Part 1, The Breaking Point. The ground shook. A deafening explosion. Dust filled the air, thick and choking. In the distance, I could see the smoke rising. The sound of rushing feet and frantic shouting pierced through the chaos. I didn't know who did it. But I knew one thing, this was no accident. They said we could never work together. Too different. Too much history between us. And yet, here we were. Two cultures, two peoples, standing at the edge of annihilation. I ran toward the heart of the settlement, where the damage was worst. The flames were everywhere. A figure in the middle of it all caught my eye. It was one of them, one of the enemy. But they were just standing there, unmoving. Like they were waiting for something. I could feel the heat, my heart pounding. My mind raced with questions. How could it come to this? Could we ever trust each other again? The past had left deep scars, but this was something else. Then I saw him. My counterpart. A representative from their side. His face was ashen, eyes wide with disbelief. Without a word, he gestured toward the figure in the flames. And that's when it hit me. He knew. He knew something I didn't. The fire wasn't just a random act. It was a message. A threat. And everything I thought I knew about peace was about to come crashing down. I had to make a choice. Stay. Or run. Part 2, The Unlikely Alliance. The days that followed were tense. We were supposed to meet to discuss peace. But after the explosion, no one was ready to listen. Anger filled the air, thick and suffocating. No one trusted anyone anymore. The enemy was closing in, and we had no choice but to try. But as I walked into the meeting room, I could feel the eyes on me, suspicion, hatred. They were waiting for me to say something that would betray them. I wasn't even sure what to say anymore. I didn't know what peace looked like. I didn't know if it was possible. And then he walked in. The man from the fire. The one who had stood in the middle of the chaos, unmoving. His eyes were cold, calculating, but there was something else there. Something human. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, his presence like a wall between us. I never thought I'd be here, he said finally. But now, there's nowhere else to go. The words hung in the air like poison. We were forced to confront the truth. There was no way out. No simple solution. But maybe we could try. We didn't have much time. Part 3, The Shifting Grounds. It started small. A gesture. A word spoken in the right tone. An apology from one side that led to a reluctant agreement from the other. But as we sat together, day after day, the walls began to crack. There was no magic solution, no sudden breakthrough. Only slow, painful progress. We shared stories. Our histories. What had led us here. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tension began to ease. But even as we tried to find common ground, something felt off. It wasn't just the past that divided us. It was the fear of what came next. The fear that the other side wasn't truly committed. The fear that we might be lying to ourselves. Then came the moment that almost destroyed everything. An accusation. A betrayal. A backstabber was revealed within our own ranks, someone who had been working against us all along. Someone who wanted the war to continue. For a moment, it seemed like we'd lost it all. The fragile trust we'd built was shattered in an instant. But then, against all odds, something unexpected happened. He stood up. The man from the fire. The one I never thought I'd trust. He spoke, his voice steady. This ends now. And for the first time, I believed him. Part 4, The Final Test. We had one shot. One last meeting. The stakes were higher than ever. One wrong move, and it could all unravel. I could feel the pressure in my chest. The room was filled with people, on both sides, waiting for the final decision. The weight of centuries of division rested on our shoulders. But in that room, there was something new. Something different. A flicker of hope. He stood next to me, his hand firmly planted on the table. No words, just a silent promise. Then he spoke. We can do this. Together. But it will take everything. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about understanding it, accepting it, and moving forward, together. I looked around the room, my heart pounding. There was no turning back now. The final decision was upon us. But I couldn't help but wonder, had we really come far enough to make it? Or was the peace we sought nothing more than an illusion? Part 5, The Unexpected Turn. The peace deal was signed. There were cheers. Applause. People hugged, cried. But it didn't feel like the victory I expected. The celebrations felt hollow, empty, because even as the papers were signed, something else was happening in the shadows. Something none of us saw coming. A last-minute betrayal. The explosion had been only the beginning. And now, the true enemy was closer than ever. The fight wasn't over. The real test was just beginning. Would we stand united? Or would the fractures of our past tear us apart again? As I stood in the center of the room, I realized the path to harmony was far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. Part 6, The Unseen Enemy. The days after the peace deal were supposed to be a relief. But instead, an eerie silence filled the air. People were smiling, but their eyes told a different story. There was no trust, only fear. I had to be vigilant. The world was watching, waiting for us to fail. I knew the cost of failure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was lurking beneath the surface. It wasn't until the first attack that we realized how close we were to the edge. The lights flickered. A loud crash. The building shook as if the ground itself had turned against us. I ran toward the sound, my heart racing. As I reached the door, I froze. Standing in the doorway, blood on his hands, was the man I had trusted. The man who had promised peace. "Don't you see?" he said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. This was never about peace. It was about control. I couldn't move. My mind screamed, no. This couldn't be happening. Not now. He had been the key to everything. The one who stood by me through it all. And now, it all came crashing down. "We were never meant to share this land," he continued. "The past will never allow it. The old ways, the old bloodlines, they demand revenge." The room spun. Everything I thought I knew was slipping through my fingers. Suddenly, there was a flash of movement. His hand darted to his side, pulling a weapon I hadn't seen. I could hear the click as he readied it, a smile creeping across his face. But before he could make a move, another figure appeared in the doorway. It was him. The man who had stood against the flames. The one who had helped build this fragile alliance. The truth was out. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Part 7, The Final Stand. It all happened so quickly. Gunfire echoed through the hall. Screams. Shouting. People ran in every direction. But I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop. I knew this moment was coming. The betrayal, the lies. They were inevitable. But nothing had prepared me for this. I stood frozen as he lunged at the betrayer. A struggle broke out, violent and fierce. The sounds of bodies crashing to the ground filled the room. "Get out of here," someone shouted at me, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Not while the truth was being fought for in front of me. The betrayer was down. His weapon had been disarmed, and yet, he didn't stop. His eyes were wild, desperate. "It's too late," he spat. "You can't stop what's already begun." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I could feel it, the tension, the fury. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And then, in that split second, as the dust settled, a new voice cut through the air. "We're not finished yet." It was him again. The one who had stayed true. His eyes locked with mine, and I saw something I hadn't seen before, determination. He wasn't just trying to build peace. He was fighting for survival. The betrayal didn't end with just one man. It spread like a sickness. And we had to fight back. The world was watching. They knew. This was the final stand. Would we survive it? Would we push through, or would we crumble under the weight of history? In the end, the choice wasn't about culture, history, or revenge. It was about who we were willing to become. Part 8, The Choice. Everything was different after that. The world had changed. The people had changed. The war wasn't just about land, or blood, or old wounds. It was about who we were willing to trust. Who we were willing to fight for. And ultimately, who we were willing to forgive. I stood there, looking at the wreckage of the last few days. The settlement was in ruins, but there was something new in the air. A strange calm. "Are we ready?" I asked, turning to him. The one who had stayed with me through it all. He nodded. "We have to be." And just like that, we made the choice. We moved forward. No one knew what the future would hold. But we were determined to find out. Because in the end, peace isn't something you find. It's something you fight for. And if we were lucky enough, we'd create it. Together. Part 9, The Last Question. Weeks had passed since the dust had settled, and yet, something lingered in the air. The world had changed, yes, but not in the way we thought it would. There were no grand celebrations. No parade. Just silence. We had done what no one thought was possible. We had walked the line between survival and annihilation, and somehow, just somehow, we found a way to live through it. But the question remained. The one that no one wanted to ask, but everyone was too afraid to ignore. It was him again, the man who had stood by me from the beginning, who now asked it, his voice grave, like a whisper from the edge of a cliff. Did we do the right thing? I stood there, staring at him. The world around us had changed, but in my heart, I wasn't so sure. We had found peace, but at what cost? The alliance we built wasn't perfect. It wasn't even clean. It was a fragile thing, held together by something far more dangerous than unity, necessity. People had died for this. Families had been torn apart. And we were left with the echo of their sacrifices, echoing louder each day. So I asked myself, as I'd asked myself countless times before, was it worth it? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. The settlement, now more peaceful, seemed like a dream. Could such peace truly survive when it was built on so many broken things? And then, like a final twist of fate, I realized the truth. The war, the betrayal, the lies, and the violence, it all led us to this moment. To this question. To this fragile peace. But the real test, the real battle, had nothing to do with nations or cultures or old grudges. It was the fight within ourselves. Because in the end, no one could answer that question for us. We had to live with the consequences of our choices. And maybe, just maybe, that was the hardest thing of all. As the sky darkened, I made my way into the night, my mind racing. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear, peace was not an achievement. It was a journey that would never end. Not for me. Not for anyone. And just as I disappeared into the shadows, a single thought lingered, stronger than any promise or treaty. Could we truly forgive the past, and walk into the future together? The answer was still out there, waiting.